On today's episode, we'll talk about remaining calm in the chaos, being of service to the project you're on, get it sold, thank you, Mr. Brown, and of course, when you show up and the director is wearing a red beret. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. As always, our website, theop.io, is up and chock full of tips, tricks, and gooey operator goodness. Make sure to check out the breakdown where the best operators in the biz explain shots they have done, the musings where we discuss everything from quick tips to larger concepts of storytelling, the blocking, the answers, the images, and so much more. If you're enjoying this podcast, please follow us, write a review, share us with your parents, and talk us up around the water cooler with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Rolling. Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello and welcome back to the Op Podcast, the podcast where we talk about operating and the art of visual storytelling. I'm Dave Comides, your host, and coming to you for the first time, actually, from the basement of my home here in Connecticut, because I have a friend and a fellow operator who has actually come to involve me in a project that he's doing, which we're going to talk about. Andy Schwartz. He is a Steadicam operator and conventional operator as well, and has been doing it for a while, and has also taught quite a bit, which is actually, I think, where we met, but we'll find out. Some of the things, but not all by any means, that he's worked on. A new TV show called CIA, a bunch of documentary stuff, including a movie called Audible, stuff for the International Rescue Committee, Discovery, National Geographic, director of a movie called A Path to Follow, DP of a movie called Guest House. He does sort of a little bit of everything, and is a really interesting guy, and I'm actually very glad to have this opportunity. Andy, thanks for being in my basement.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me, what's your story?
I got out of college not doing film or photography or anything.
What'd you go to college for?
I went to college for economics. Okay. And I studied a lot of anthropology and religion. It was like a liberal arts school.
Wow.
And so I was not into economics, but at that age, people are telling you what you should do, what you should get your degree in. I was really into music in high school, and I thought I was going to go to school to play music. Uh-huh. And I have recently realized this bit of a dream that I had, that when I started playing guitar in 8th grade, I really wanted to play in a band. Okay. And I wanted to travel around the world and play in a band. Who didn't want to do that?
Especially, right?
The issue was I knew if I told anybody about this, they're going to be like, hey man, good luck with your
you and everybody else.
Yeah, good luck with the dream.
Yeah.
And so I kind of put it to bed. I sort of didn't tell anybody about it. And I think I didn't pursue it because it seemed impossible. And I think as I started to play guitar and when I started to graduate high school, I was very good. I was even teaching a little bit, and people were like, what are you going to do? I was like, well, I think I would go to school for music. And they were like, oh, what are you going to do? Teach? And I'm like, no, man. I don't want to tell you about what I really want to do because you'll probably laugh.
Well, it's sort of your own fault then, right?
Definitely my own fault, but it was just sort of the culture around me.
Yeah.
Everybody was very supportive of me playing, but I think had I said hey, I'm going to play in a band and travel around the world,
yeah,
maybe I could have gotten that done. But I definitely wasn't going to tell anybody because people are going to laugh at you. And plus I didn't have a lot of other musician friends around or anything. So slowly I got into school and I had to pick something. I ended up in economics because everybody's like, you got to get a job when you get out and all that stuff.
Yep.
I got a job when I got out, interning at Discovery Channel.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And it was good, but I wasn't very interested in the job, but I was very interested in Discovery because I watched a lot of docs. And I was really into climbing and mountaineering and ice climbing and stuff and rock climbing at that time.
Sounds like a dream. I mean, what, interning, but you're in the office mostly?
In an office,
okay.
Yep, working in a department that did some legal contracts. So I was reviewing these contracts and, kind of going through them to see if there was outstanding things that needed to be settled or if they were valid still for different shows they were acquiring. Mm-hmm. So they would buy shows from the BBC or something and license them, reversion them, whatever, and then I would review these things. I did it for about 6 or 8 months. And at the same time, there was another film unit that was in-house at Discovery, and there was only one film unit at Discovery Channel. Everything else was made out of house.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
You know what I mean? It was all farmed out to production companies. And that film unit was getting ready to do a show called Eco Challenge in Argentina. And Mark Burnett, who's Survivor guy, he was doing that. That was his thing. That was like before Amazing Race and Survivor.
This is
and
before
all that.
he was Mark Burnett.
Before he was real,
Okay.
he was doing this Eco Challenge thing. And they had done Morocco already and another one. And so this one came up. And the crew that was going down there from this unit, they didn't have a lot of outdoor experience. And they had like 3 shows to do down there. And so they said, hey, can you help these guys get outfitted with gear, tents, whatever. I had all these connections at North Face and Mountain Hardware. And so I kind of called around and I got them some free gear and credits for credits in the shows and all that. And they basically moved me from that little legal job into the production unit as a production assistant.
Oh, no way. Like, so you went down there with them?
I did not go down there. And so they were sending footage back and they were down there for a while. And then I ended up being a production assistant and assistant editor on all these shows.
Cool.
Around Eco Challenge. There was a show for Discovery Health Channel, there was a show for Travel Channel, and then a show for Discovery. So there's like 3 shows. And so I worked at a place called Roland House, where I met a bunch of people that were in the film business. And I remember just thinking like, man, these are like my people. Like these people are like me.
That's so wild though, but you had no idea. Like till you saw it.
I had no real clue that, I loved docs and I watched a lot of docs about Everest and stuff like that. And I just hadn't put it together that like somebody made this stuff and they went out there with cameras. It just didn't, what's hard about the film business, even in docs, it's like, it's hard to see into. Like you can see a band on stage and figure out what they do, but like it's hard to see onto a TV set or a movie set, if you're not in the industry. And even if you are, it's sometimes hard to get access to. So I just didn't know what it was. I mean, I grew up right outside of DC, so I was working down in DC. That's where Discovery was. And there just wasn't a lot of film sets and stuff around. I didn't know that many people. I didn't know anybody that worked in the business, so I just couldn't see into it. Mm-hmm. And then finally I did, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is good. Like, this is editing. And I learned how to edit under a guy named Josh Berkeley, who was amazing. And I remember one time at lunch called to me and said, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to be outside. And he was like, you should think about shooting, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll get a camera. I was like, actually, I'm going to climb this Mount Hood with my friends. Like, maybe I'll take the camera and whatever. And I took the camera and we kind of filmed some of that. And I got this editor to transfer my footage. And he was like, I remember he said, he goes, you're doing the right thing. You kind of like filmed the wide shots and you got some feet walking around and hands on the ropes. I'm like, oh, cool, great, awesome. And so they were just kind of like pushing me in a direction, and
that's great. And
I realized I really wanted to shoot stuff, but I had no idea how. I didn't know what to do, and so I really got into editing because that was like, to me, a very technical and creative skill.
Do you think the stuff that you were shooting that they liked did you basically go, well, when we edit, this is sort of the pieces that they use, so I'm going to try to get those kind of pieces, or was it not that?
I had already shot that stuff before I had this job.
Oh, okay.
And then I remember I had it on like a high 8 or something, so I brought it in and they were like transferring. And then once I saw what was being edited, and then there was the other significant thing at that time was in that production group after we did Eco Challenge, I was in charge of watching all this footage by a guy named Wolfgang Bayer. Wolfgang Bayer was like a wildlife cinematographer who would travel around the world with his family and film wildlife in Africa and all this stuff. And he would film whales and he would film, bison in Yellowstone. And so I would watch all of Discovery's library and I'd be like, hey, we have all this great whale footage.
Cool.
We should make a show out of the library about whales. Oh, wow. And so we would do, and so I was watching this and I remember specifically, I had my camera and I had a tripod and I remember watching him pan across these like plateaus in Africa and in Yellowstone. And I remember the pan, it would rise just a little bit and then it would kind of settle down. It would sort of tilt up and it would pan and then it would tilt down and it would stop. And I remember thinking, I'm going to do that. And I would take my camera and I would go out to the Potomac River and I would work on the pan and I would try to do the rise and I'd watch it and I'd be like, it's too fast. It's too slow. Like, that's boring. Or that's
so
too
great.
bumpy. Yeah. And I would just mimic what he was doing.
Wow.
And so worked for that production unit. I was pretty eager. And they eventually, a woman, Ann Lustig, who worked there, who passed away. She was like a real first mentor to me, along with some of the other people. They sent me on a scout to Yellowstone, and I brought my little camera, and then I ended up on the shoot with a cinematographer named Bob Poole.
Cool.
And we went on this long shoot, and we did a show called Hidden Yellowstone, and that was the first time I was like in the field on a show, and Bob did Steadicam. And so
okay.
I was, this is, 2000.
This is the first time you've ever seen one.
He had a big Pelican, 1650, and he had backpack straps on it, and we were shooting Super 16 film. And so there's a whole crew. There's a guy named Scott Simper there who's a sound guy. Scott had like just come back from Everest. He was like, so I'm like, these are the people I want to be around. And I remember Scott was reading this book, The Poisonwood Bible, and I was reading the same book. And I was like, man, this is great. And so we went out there, and I remember we hiked to this waterfall. I didn't know what the Steadicam was, but I carried the Steadicam on my back in the 1650, like 4 miles into the wood. It was really heavy, but that's what we did. Got it out there. And then they unpacked the 16, and I was like, oh, I thought I had the camera. And they're like, no, that's a Steadicam. I'm like, I don't know what that is. And then they built it, and he was balancing it. I'm like, I don't know what this is. And he puts a vest on. He takes off his shoes. He puts it in low mode, and he's doing these shots up this creek to this waterfall in the water.
His shoes because he's walking in the creek.
In the creek.
That's
up,
nuts.
Up to the waterfall. And I was like...
That's cool.
And I was like, this is unbelievable. Like, I had never...
What an introduction.
Seen anything like this. And I could see what the shots were going to be.
Yeah.
And I'm watching this guy walk, and I'm like, this is like magic. It seemed so beautiful, but it also seemed so physical and elegant. It was like all these things.
Do you remember what kind of Steadicam it was? Did you know enough to know it?
Yeah. I had asked him a couple years later, and it was basically like he had like an EFP that he had modified a bunch.
Okay.
He never took a workshop, and he told me, he was like, you have to take a workshop. I never did. I should have, and because I was like asking him all these questions. So then we ended up on another shoot in Yellowstone, and I remember in the hotel, I was like, I cornered him. I was like, so you own all this gear? And he was like, yeah. I'm like, so how does this work? Like, who hires you? Where do you...
Tell me everything.
Yeah. And he told me, he was like, I get around for this and do that. And I'm like, man, I
think...
year?
What year is this, ballpark?
Maybe 2001.
Okay. All right.
2000, 2001.
Yeah.
And I was so moved by the Steadicam. I wanted to do it so badly. And so a couple years later, I think in 2004, I had left Discovery to go freelance because I had gotten interviewed for a job at Travel Channel. Mm-hmm. It was a supervising producer role. And I remember the woman I interviewed with, I told her what I wanted to do. And she was like, this is not your job. And I said, what do you mean? She's like, you're going to go out on set, but you're going to go visit with production companies making shows. And then you're going to come back here and tell me how it's going. You're never going to be making anything. And I was like, oh.
I'm a spy.
She was like, but this will be a great job if you want to move up and everything. And I was like, I think I want to freelance. She's like, you're going to have to freelance. And I went back and I told the people that I was working for, I was like, I don't think that's my job. And they were like, yeah, it's not. You need to be in the field. I said, okay, great. So I left, went freelance, worked for a production company, and I bought a Steadicam Mini from B&H.
Which was what? That little handheld thing?
It was like a sled with a little monitor, and it had battery, and it was like the pre-Flyer.
Okay.
Remember the Flyer?
Yeah.
And it had this weird sock on the arm. It had a one-section arm. Okay. And it had a sock that you would cover it up, like a fleece sock.
All right.
And I was carrying that thing around at my parents' house, and I was just trying to figure out I had the video.
And what, you could basically put like a handy cam on it or something?
Yeah, I think I had a GL2.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Stuck that thing on there, and I'm walking around with it. And I remember thinking, like, I'm going to do some shots with this thing. And actually, you know what? I should back up a little bit. Before that, a friend of mine named Marissa Ronka, we were both working at Discovery. We were working for that group. We wanted to try to make a short film together because she wanted to do sound and I wanted to shoot. And I said, well, maybe we can try to shoot a story. in the closet of Discovery, there was like a glide cam that you would carry with your hands.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And so I used that, and we made a short film, and it did pretty well. It like won some awards, and it went places, and we won like $500 somewhere.
That's great.
And I was like, oh, we did it. We made a film that was cohesive, and people understood it. And like that was my first little Steadicam thing. Then I had that Mini a couple years later, and then I got hired at a production company, and I shot a pilot. So I'd been shooting on different things like associate producer, and I would do B camera and stuff, second camera with other DPs, and I was just learning. Shot a pilot in Baltimore for a show about urban exploration in 2004, and the Discovery picked up the pilot for 5 episodes, and so I was the associate producer, and I was basically the other DP. We hired a DP, and I became a DP, and that guy was like, oh, you have a Steadicam? Bring it. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not very good at this. He's like, who cares? It's going to be fine. And he really was like one of those guys who said, don't worry about what you don't know. Just figure it out.
Yeah.
And it was great working with him.
That's great.
And so I remember bringing it on set, and we were shooting in Chicago, the first episode, and I built it, and we were walking around the hallway, and he helped me get it better balanced and stuff because he worked with Bob. And then I had it, and I took that thing into tunnels underneath the city of Chicago, like walking under the city. There's all these tunnels that were train tunnels. They used to bring coal into the city.
Yeah.
So I was carrying the Steadicam underneath there, and I was like, man, I made it.
That's cool.
I was like, man, this...
Did you feel like you knew, like you could control it? I mean, was...
Yeah, I wasn't... When I just looked at those shows, they're on YouTube still.
Oh, yeah?
And I was like, it's not that bad.
Really?
It's not great, but it's not that bad.
That's
and
great.
And I was, shooting on a wide lens, like walking around with an autofocus camera. But I mean, I was in all these crazy buildings and missile silos. Like we were in like abandoned buildings. I fell through a floor in an old bowling alley wearing the Steadicam, and like the Steadicam stopped me from, because the arm got caught, stopped me from like falling all the way down.
Oh my God.
We did all these like crazy things happened, and I was just like, man, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to be out exploring the world. I love toting the camera around, and now the Steadicam sort of frees me up to make beautiful, interesting cinematic shots. And then I took the workshop in 2005.
Now let me go back for a second, because you said that you were just amazed by how sort of magical it was when you first saw it. Like, what was it about it that do you remember what it was? Was it just like how it floated, or that someone could do it, or the fact that he was in the stream, or?
Yeah, it was the thing that is in my head is looking at him. I can still see the shot, or I can see what he was doing and where I was standing, is that he kind of carried it over there, and it was attached to him, and he was just walking around with it, and he was bouncing and doing stuff. And I remember looking at him, and I remember thinking the camera is like floating, he's moving, and he's moving in a different way the camera's moving. And I felt like there was this sort of like, the camera is doing something magical, but a person is still doing it, and what he's doing and what's coming out the other side are two different things. It was like he's inputting this kind of like walking over rocks in the creek, and the camera is just like, that's cool, smooth. And I was like, what, how is that
it's like disembodied, basically.
It like took everything away, Yeah. And I remember thinking
really
that
neat.
was the magical moment for me. And then that same setup, in that same shoot, we went to another location, and he was telling, there was a ghost story, and they did these shots around these trees, of the camera, like in regular mode. And he's walking through the trees, and he's wrapping around these trees. And it was the same thing again. I was like, I can imagine the shots because I see what the lens is doing. But what he was doing, walking around with like Teva sandals and shorts on, stumbling through these trees, because it was all kind of in the middle of the woods.
Sure.
The camera is just moving in this like beautiful way. And I remember thinking like, I don't know what that is, but I had felt that similar thing watching somebody play like a musical instrument and thinking like, what's coming out is like, I'm seeing some like complicated thing happening, and the music that's coming out doesn't match the complicated thing that's happening.
It's a really interesting way to put it. It's funny because the first time I ever saw a quote unquote Steadicam was in a river. It was in upstate New York. I was the focus puller, I think. Yeah, I was the focus puller on a movie that Corey Garriak, who's now a really big DP, and he gaffed all of Wally Pfister's stuff and whatever. He was directing called Crawdaddies. It was a horror movie, and like, you know, it was one of these things where we worked like 72 hours straight or whatever. But this guy named Bob Fisk brought a quote unquote Steadicam, and I'd never even heard of one before. And it was made out of like, the vest was made out of plastic buckets, and the arm was made out of tubing, and the center thing was a paint pole that
Wow.
you would, but it worked. And
Yeah.
I remember the same kind of thing where it's like, it wasn't, I don't think he was quite as smooth because the equipment didn't work as well as the guy you were, but I remember looking at it going, oh wow, that's really amazing because it's floating over the water.
Yeah.
So it's a similar kind of thing.
Yeah, it was such a cool time for me because it was like I didn't know film, and now we're shooting film. We got these like really nice cameras, you know, the SR2. We got a Steadicam. I'm with all these like really professional people who have all this experience, and for me, it was just like I couldn't have wished myself to be in a better place.
That's really cool.
And I didn't even know it existed, and so it was like such a gift that I stumbled into, but only because people saw something in me and pushed me towards it. Like, you know, I think I got there kind of on my own, but I definitely think like people, because of what I was saying or what I was searching for, people that were around me luckily pushed me into that. I wouldn't have gotten there on my own.
Yeah.
And that to me is something I don't forget. And it's just, it feels weird because it was such a huge turning point for me. But I think for them, it was sort of like, did you have a good shoot? And I was like, it was, you know, I couldn't even articulate how good it was. And they were like, great. So next time we're going to do this. And I'm like, oh my God, great. You know, and so I just dove into this world because the camera, the Steadicam allowed me, I really wanted to do docs because I wanted to experience what other people lived, what they had done, the places they had gone. I wanted, you know, I really enjoyed, you know, the travel of going into somebody's house and just sort of like talking to them and hanging out and all the things we were doing and uncovering history and, you know, all the stuff that I got to do over those times. It was really great. So I just kind of traveled and did a lot of that stuff for maybe 5 years, and I got pretty burned out. And so then I went back to DC, much better at the Steadicam now. I'd taken the workshop and all that stuff. And
How long had you done it before you took the workshop?
About a year.
Did you go into the workshop and have to, was there an unlearning that had to happen,
No.
or was it just a building off of?
Yeah, there was definitely a wake up call with the amount of weight and the size of the rig. But I remember thinking those rigs are so much easier to deal with and they're so much steadier
Because they have the mass.
because they have weight.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I remember thinking, like, I don't care about the weight. I was in really good shape. So I was like, I'm good with the weight. It's just heavy. But man, I remember thinking, man, this is way easier than this tiny little rig I have where like someone can breathe on it and it goes weird, you know?
Yeah. But it's kind of like swinging with two bats, and in a weird way,
Yeah.
it's the opposite. And then like, you're like, oh, swinging with one bat, it's actually,
It's like so nice. Yeah. And so I took the workshop. I remember being extremely intimidated by, you know, some of the instructors there because they were
Who were
New
the
York.
instructors?
It was Jerry, not intimidating.
Jerry Holloway.
Yeah, he was great. Garrett,
Oh, okay.
Mike O'Shea,
Okay.
Saad Mustafa,
wow.
Jay Kilroy, Alan Melbreck.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, it was great. But I remember thinking like, man, these guys are like not the guys I've been hanging out with. These guys are like
These are filmmakers. Like
they seemed more like it seemed like walking into like an auto mechanic's garage and they know what they're talking about, but I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
It was like that kind of thing. Like they were talking about like the grips and this and that. And I'm like, dude, I'm like been in the woods
Yeah.
with like 4 people. So I don't know what a dolly grip is.
But I would bet that they were sort of fascinated by that.
No one knew because I didn't say anything
Oh, I
because
see.
I was
Okay.
like just absorbing,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Alan Melbreck was like, he liked me because he was into the same type of stuff I did.
Uh-huh.
And so he very much kind of was like, hey, you know, you should hang out with us.
Yeah.
And like, I became tight with him and Jay and you know, obviously Mike and all those guys, you know, over time. But, you know, at that workshop, I remember sitting in the back of the room. It was in a different place than it is now. And just thinking like, man, these guys know so much. This is like a whole nother world now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was still unfamiliar with the one I had been in. So it just took me a little bit to want to even be in the narrative world, because I was just sort of getting on the road and traveling and going to Alaska and all these places that I was in Costa Rica. And I was like, oh man, like,
that's great.
It was really good.
Yeah.
And, some of the DPs I worked with, they had done commercials and stuff, and they were like, this is so much better. And I was like, really? Why? Like, wouldn't it be nice to have like a big crew and do all? They were like, no, it's like slow. Like here we just run out, we do our thing, we go back. And I always wanted to do it, but I was afraid of it.
And there's probably a lot to them that it's like, we just do what we want. Like nobody's looking over our shoulder going, why are you doing that? Or the client wants this or whatever.
And there's like, I think for docs and stuff, and for outdoor adventure things, there's a bit of the expedition mentality, which is like, we have to do two things. We have to make our film, but we have to be safe and we have to survive. Yeah. And we have to take care of ourselves. And that comes first, but we have to do them simultaneously. And we can't do one without the other. And that was like a big draw for me of sort of, putting myself in like kind of strange situations that were physically very challenging to begin with. Mm-hmm. And then having the camera there, which sort of made some of the physical stuff go quiet. Whereas normally if I was doing that, I'd be like, this is tough and it's cold. But when I'm filming, I'm like, I'm just, it sort of takes your mind off it. Yeah. And I loved that about it, because I had already been in, I was climber and doing all this stuff. And, what's kind of a bummer about it is that the more I got into filmmaking and spread my wings in like different types of things that I was doing, getting into Steadicam, a lot of that outdoor adventure stuff that I really did for a long time, which I sort of stopped doing as much. Mm-hmm. I still love it, but I kind of moved away from that a little bit into more different types of filmmaking and DP work and directing things and stuff, and I have other friends that, stayed with it, like I remember a sound guy I worked with was like, at one time we were on a shoot and he was like, you got to meet this guy, Jimmy. And Jimmy's like this great photographer and he's like such a cool dude and whatever. And he was like, you guys should like meet. And it turns out, I think it was like a year later, I was like, is that Jimmy Chin you're talking about? And he was like, yeah, man. But this was like a long time ago. So, Jimmy's, incredible. Yeah. And, it was just, that world at that time was pretty small.
I was going to say it's got to be, and it probably. I mean, it's obviously bigger now, but among the people who are doing really top notch work, I'm sure it's still pretty small.
Yeah, like Pablo Durana is a great cinematographer who came out of that DC group, and like he's incredible and an unbelievable athlete, but also like a great human being and a great person. And him and I never met. But like I knew, everybody was like, oh, you guys should like meet and whatever. But then he moved and was traveling. We were never home. I mean, my friends, I was just with a friend of mine today and he was like, you rented our office space and then we didn't see you for like 2 years, because some years I was gone like 40 weeks, but just going wherever, it was kind of cool.
And so you're doing Steadicam on these documentaries. Does that mean you're in the rig for long periods of time?
So I was DPing.
Okay.
I was a DP. So I was shooting handheld, whatever, shooting interviews, lighting, doing all the stuff, and doing Steadicam. Uh-huh. So we would pull the Steadicam out when we wanted to do stuff. Yeah. We had a jib sometimes. We had all this.
But it was mostly like dramatic, artistic-y type of stuff? Or
sometimes, but sometimes it was like that Yellowstone stuff, or like found somebody through the woods, or we're like,
Gotcha.
I would always like try to pull it into places where I thought it could impact the story, and it could set a mood. And I remember early on thinking like, I can shoot this stuff and show you what's happening, but with the Steadicam, I can allow you to feel what's happening more. And that clicked with me pretty early, that the Steadicam was like this umbilical cord for like the feeling and the emotion that I was having, being in these places and sort of drifting through the snow or drifting down this, weird hallway in this like abandoned building, or
just because of the ethereal feel of the movement.
Yeah. Or... because there are certain things like I could follow somebody around a house, but if I did it with a Steadicam, it was like, you got to feel for what it was like to be in the house. It definitely had this like more presence to me than anything else I was doing. And so I started to just push it into everything I was doing when I thought it was a better fit. Yeah. And then my friend got a job. Well, we became friends. She got a job doing an HGTV show. And I was like, I don't think I want to shoot an HGTV show.
This was like Home and Garden Network?
Yeah, it was like home renovation stuff.
Home renovation.
And it was happening in DC, so I didn't have to travel.
All right.
Which was good because I'd been on the road for a while. it paid pretty good. And I said, okay. And I remember at that time, MTV Cribs. And I remember thinking, oh, that's kind of fun. They're like flying around these houses with the Steadicam, like Peter Abraham.
Some of that.
Yeah. And I remember like, oh man, if HGTV did that, that would be even better. And so I said, I'll do the show if you let me do Steadicam and give me a little rental. And they said, okay, show us what it does and whatever. And I did it. And they were like, this is incredible.
Because you're floating through the houses.
Yeah, flying through the house.
What was the show?
What was that show called? Get It Sold.
Okay.
It was like a real estate show.
Yeah.
And this girl, Sabrina, who's very popular now, her and I became really good friends. And, you know, I did Steadicam 4 days a week. And so I was like, it was my excuse to be in the rig constantly. I would do walk and talks down the sidewalk. I'd push into the house. I'd fly up the stairs. It was like I was just doing it constantly.
Which just means you're honing your craft without even knowing it, right?
I was in the rig 4 days a week for like 2 years almost, like all day, like doing and just making up shots. And I got good doing that. Basically, I feel like that's where I really figured out like what I could actually do with it. And then I started to drift into like, oh, I could probably actually follow like a story and a narrative and work with a director and all that. But it took me, you know, 4 years or so to feel comfortable.
And at that point, is the biggest problem your confidence or your abilities?
Confidence. Yeah. I mean, confidence, but not in like, I don't think I could do it. Just, I hadn't done it. So I didn't know what it meant. Like if someone would have said, hey, you just got to walk down the hallway with these two actors. Yeah. I would have been like, that's it. But I thought it was something else.
So like, I don't know what I don't know. And that's what makes me afraid of it.
Yeah. But that also was like what drew me into it more, was sort of being like, well,
and had you done any narrative?
Yeah, like a little indie things, like, you know, people had done stuff like, you know, I remember one time we shot a 48-hour film festival and I was like, oh, let's do Steadicam. No one had done that. And we did Steadicam and I remember it was a narrative thing. And like, I remember the shot up on the screen and the whole theater got quiet and people were like, oh my God. And they were like cheering.
This is big time.
Because it was like such a cool, it was like a long oner. Oh yeah. And I remember I was
the whole thing was a oner?
Like a
was
good
the oner within it.
There was like 3 oners during the 4-minute thing.
Sure.
And I remember I was like, oh, that actually looked pretty good.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I remember it, and then people responded to it and I was just like, all right, like that's cool, you know, because I was like a paintbrush. I'm just like, does it work over here? Can it work over there? What can I do?
Sure.
You know, I wasn't in New York and I didn't know that side of the film business. So I'm like trying to put this thing out in the world where I had access to. Yeah. You know, and so, you know, over the years I had shot all these shows and used this thing all over the place, but was still DPing and all that. And TV really got into like pretty much like reality television. It started getting really fabricated. And, you know, some of the shows and the producers I was working with were like not doing it as much. And, you know, I had gotten in doing natural history and outdoor adventure stuff. And it started to turn into like, you know, there's monkey wrench shows and there's this and there's that. And like, it's kind of outdoor adventure, but sort of fabricated. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I want to do like documentary feature films. And that's what, you know, led me into more like, I guess I'm going to use this word very lightly, sophisticated forms of, you know, formats, I guess.
What do you mean by that?
Like doc features that were longer and had a longer story rather than like TV shows. Yeah. And so I sort of like, you know, moved into that and then got into commercials and I was doing some like music videos and, you know.
When you get onto the commercials and the music videos coming from where you came from, was there a learning curve to like, what does the key grip do and what does the dolly grip do? And did you just sort of like keep your head down and how do you deal with that?
I'm still battling I mean, you could ask the ACs and my dolly grips from the last show is that I don't really shut down and I'm like, I'll do everything. Like I'll hold the camera all day. Like that's fine.
Oh,
you know what I mean? And so I wasn't used to someone like taking the camera off my shoulder and, like, and building the thing, you know, I'm like coming over trying to build it.
Because you're used to doing everything all yourself.
Yeah. I'm like, I'll change the filter. And they're like, no. Yeah. You can go over there. and don't even look at the camera. And I'm like, oh, okay, but I'm happy to help, you know?
So it's hard to shed that.
It's, you know, I always had the feeling that we're like a team. And so I always want to be a helper on the team. And, you know, I think it's not like, I know I'm not supposed to do that and I don't want to do anybody else's job, but I'm also like, we're a team. Like, you know, we help each other out. And so, but I'm also like, well, when it's my turn, it's my turn. And that's cool. But yeah, it's just, you know, some people don't like it and some people are like, think it's funny.
Did you run into problems with that early on?
I was confused when I would work and there'd be like 2 ACs and a loader around or something. I was kind of like, I'll build what can I, I'm used to doing all the stuff. And so I was like, tell me when it's my turn to go, you know? And that happened for a while because those jobs were like sporadic.
Sure.
I have a funny story about the first music video I did, the first big music video I did. I had done a few in DC and they were like local DC artists and stuff, nobody big. And so I had come back from, I think I was in Alaska, and I came back and someone called me to do a music video in DC. And I was like, oh, when is it? And it was Monday. And I was like, oh, sure. And this was like the week or two before. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. I'm available. I'll do it. Steadicam. And they said it was on Super 16. I was like, oh, cool. I haven't seen that in a while. So I called Alan Melbrick, got like a Lomo bracket or something from him. So made sure I had all the stuff, any cables. And I'm not nervous about this job at all because it's just a music video.
Right.
And then on the Friday night before the shoot, I go to a party and people are interested in what I do because I'm the only one around that does the thing. And they're asking me what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, I've been on this show and doing that. And I'm doing this music video on Monday. And they're like, oh, who? I'm like, I don't know, somebody in DC. And they're like, well, who's the artist? And I'm like, I don't know. So I have to dig out the call sheet. And I'm like, it's a guy named Brad Paisley. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I don't know who this is.
I don't know who that is.
So he, at the time, was this huge country singer.
Okay.
And they're like, I'm like, I don't know. How big is this guy? And then a woman in the kitchen grabs a People magazine or something, and he's on the cover. And I'm like, oh, this guy's like a big deal. And they're like, he's like the biggest country singer, period, right now. And I'm like, so I like look him up. And I'm like, oh my God. So I call my AC, Ian Axelrod, who's great. I call Ian and I go, Ian. He's like, yeah, what's up? And I'm like, this guy's like a big deal. And he's like, yeah.
Now your head's exploded.
Yeah. So I'm like nervous now, right?
Yeah.
And so Ian's like, so what, man? It's a music video. And I'm like, I know, but it's like, you know, this guy's like, you know, pressure. I don't want to mess this up. He's like, who cares, man? It's a music video.
Yeah, right.
He's like, I'll see you on Monday. I'm like, okay. And so I get there early in DC and like I never forget the director. I'm like, I build the rig and everything's fine. I'm like, all right, I got to chill. And the director comes over and he's got a beret on. And I'm like, oh shit, this guy's got a beret. He's like serious, you know, like, and then we did some shots of these kids playing football and he was like, yeah, that was great. I'm like, that's it.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the day I was like, oh, this is pretty easy.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a music video and it did really well. And I never saw the music video. And then later the following year, I was somewhere in Texas or something. And there was like a TV playing in a bar.
No way.
And I saw the shots. And I was like, oh, what are these shots? What is this?
Like, I remember
I'm like, I
this
shot
for some
that
reason.
stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, I shot that. And then the people were like, what? They're like, this is like an awards show. And that song had won like a Grammy.
So
and they were playing the music video.
Oh, that's really cool.
And I was like, oh, cool, man. I'm like, they're like, so like, you shot that? What do you do? I was like, it's just too much to like go into.
Yeah, right.
But it was like cool to see.
Oh, that's pretty neat. That's cool.
Yeah, it was funny.
So you got out of your own head in time to do the work.
Yeah, but I mean, I still kind of go through that process sometimes, I think, which is good. You know, I think it's good. It makes me know I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
When I don't care, I don't get nervous. And when I do care, I get a little like, oh, make sure everything's like buttoned up. And it kind of keeps me sharper. Because I've definitely been in jobs where I'm like, I don't really want to be here. I'm not nervous about it. I show up. I'm like, not, you know, I just don't do my best work, I think, when I'm not a little bit like ready, you know, like stimulated, I guess.
I can see that. I find that when I'm nervous, I actually will almost do better work, only because like
focused.
It's almost like you're looking for the wildlife that's going to attack you. So your energy is up, and your instincts are sort of like firing all over the place.
Yeah.
As long as you can keep that in check. If it gets out of control, then you got another problem. But yeah, I find a lot of times that's when like when everything's sort of like, it's almost like electrifying.
Yeah.
In a weird way, right?
Yeah, I just feel like I'm a little bit more stimulated. I'm a bit more engaged. I actually was doing a documentary, I've done a couple documentaries about gun violence and been like on the streets in Philly and Baltimore and stuff. And this woman from The Wire was directing this documentary in Baltimore that I ended up only shooting a little bit on. But she asked me what was like a strength or something, and I said,
"What was a strength?"
Oh, she asked me what she's like, what is your strong point when things are going bad or something? And I said, when things are easy, I kind of can relax. I said, but when things are going poorly or we're in danger or something bad is happening, like I get super focused, but I'm really calm.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like that was like my strength, is that like in chaos, whether we're like out in the middle of the woods or something, or we're on the side of a mountain, or I'm like in the city and we're in not a safe area, it's like I'm so focused. I get very focused, and I'm very aware. And I think that just comes from a lot of the people I was around, and a bit of just paying attention and a little bit of those nerves. I think are really good at times.
You do better work.
I think you're just more aware of the people around you and the world around you. What they're asking you to do, what you want. And I think when you're too, at least for me, too relaxed, maybe a little passive, maybe I missed something that they asked, maybe I heard it the way I wanted to hear it,
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And I think, being a little bit, I think the pressure is good, because I think it forces us to sort of pay attention a little bit better. Mm-hmm. So I find that if I'm not nervous, I'm sort of like, well, what's happening? Like, why am I not on right now? I feel like the dimmer's down.
What am I missing? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wonder why am I not engaged? Is it not my time?
Mm-hmm.
And I've definitely gotten better about being able to do really nice work and be relaxed, but it's just like my brain has to be like turned on, and that's why I kind of like that feeling.
And so do you find artificial ways to do that when it's not happening organically?
No.
It just doesn't happen.
I'm just like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely, with the Steadicam, if I don't have an emotion that I'm chasing, I'll try to create one. Especially on commercials. A lot of commercials I've been on, there's like, oh, this is the story, but it's a commercial. It's advertising. And so, you could just stabilize the camera from A to B.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't do for 30 times.
But it doesn't really feel like anything. No. Yeah. And I've definitely had a couple occasions where I've imposed my emotional will on it, and they have said that felt too heavy or too dramatic. Can you like make it a little bit more playful? And I'm like, oh, good.
Yeah.
Playful's an emotion.
Yeah.
I can use
give
that.
Me something. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Rather than, I mean, I feel like so many times people come up and they say, I'm like, well, what's the shot? And they're like, well, starts here and it goes over there and it's kind of slow. And I'm like, man, like kind of slow
doesn't mean a lot.
Doesn't, and that's why then I'm sort of like, do they not know? Do they not know how to communicate? Do they not, so I'm trying to always figure out like where are they and where can I meet them, and how far down the road do I have to go to meet them? And I'm happy to go all the way back and then find out like they don't necessarily know. So let me help them build something that it is what they want, or they actually know, but they're busy. They got something else they're talking about. Or you know what? I just need to show them something, and then we'll find our way together. That's fine too.
There are a lot of those people that I work with who can't, as weird as it is, they can't envision stuff as well as they show me it. No, it's got to be a little faster than this. Yeah. They've got to see it before they can give that feedback.
Yeah, and I have realized the more I really prefer, and I know this is maybe not how a lot of people like want to hear this, but I mean, I know some people that won't want to hear it. I guess I don't know if it's a lot, but I know
they can tune this part out.
I know a few that this would make them mad. Is that I'm trying to get to showing them the thing as fast as I possibly can, because that give them something to react to, and I like to put the rig on and be like this, and then they're like yes, and I'm like great. So we're gonna go for that, put it down, and then we work. But I'm always trying to get the lens up to get a reaction. If they don't know, or I'm not getting clarity from them.
So you're saying the people who don't like that are the people who are like, yeah, we're still building it, or we've got something to do, or whatever. Like they're not ready to have it put up.
Yeah, I mean, like if there's no finder out and we're not looking at shots, because there's so many times like that, and it's we're watching the rehearsal or whatever we're doing, and it's sort of like we'll find the thing, or we're going to cover the heck out of it anyway. I think it's just nice to get a frame up and no matter what it is, and be like, this is the shot that we got to work inside this tiny little TV screen, and it's going to go from here to here, and it's like great. So like forget about everything else here. This is all we're trying to get to. And I think part of that comes from me directing my own stuff sometimes, of realizing how much things kind of we go through the motions of so many things that we never get to or we never use. And, I realize like, oh man, and even editing, I'm like, man, so much stuff doesn't get used. Why can't we just decide on the thing we want? Especially narrative, so much of that is the thing that frustrates me so much is this is what we're going to use, but we have to give them this too. And it's just like, there's the politics of it and all that. But of course. That's a whole nother story. Which is good. I'm good with that too. Yeah. I very much, I think at one point would do anything anybody wanted. And now I think I really want to help them say like, let's commit to the idea. Like,
which can be tricky, right? Because not everybody wants that.
Yeah. And I'm just like, this is going to be good. And if it's the only thing we have, we know it's fantastic. But, that doesn't always work, and it doesn't work in television all the time. And that's totally cool. It does work on narrative feature stuff more for sure. And, so I think like trying to create emotion with the rig and the Steadicam and me and what's happening in the story and trying to respond to something, it's not always given to you. So sometimes you have to kind of fish for it, or you have to create it.
Now, when you're talking about creating an emotion, I mean, so much of that has to do with framing, so much of that has to do with speed, and so much, there's all those things, right? That is it the kind of thing that you think about what that is, and then you try, is there an actual thought process when you're doing that? Like, is it, I'm going to do this and it's going to feel spooky or whatever, or is it just sort of that you just start to move and you kind of adjust till it feels right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that's a good question. I think it starts with, is there tension in this moment? Of any sort. I'm like, is there tension here? If there is tension here, where is it coming from?
I mean, figuring out what you're trying to create first.
Yeah, from the story.
Yeah.
Because I feel like every scene generally has tension of some sort, or it does not have tension, or that tension is on the playful side or the joy side or whatever. So it's sort of like, is there tension that needs to be felt to the viewers? Because, sadness can be seen, can sadness be felt in the movement and all that stuff. And so, once I kind of determine, I think through questions or observation, like what is the emotion that is happening in the scene that we want to evoke and bring to life in the people watching it. And so then I start to think about, well, what lens are we on? I mean, the lighting, all this stuff goes to that thing. Sure. And so the only thing I generally have control over as an operator sometimes is what the camera's doing. Maybe I can make a suggestion on a lens or an idea to the DP, depending on who it is. But, I'm sort of thinking like, okay, they're having this moment, they're lonely, they're reflective. Like, what is this thing doing, whether I'm on a dolly or handheld or whatever, that's invisible to the audience but can be felt a little bit, and it adds that little bit of that umbilical cords type thing to the emotion that the character might be going through, because sometimes you're filming somebody who's not talking at all, and they're very much, as an actor, embodying the emotion of whatever this character's feeling, by staring out the window or, staring at the floor or thinking or pacing. And, that moment I think is so key for the audience to pick up on. And I think that's where the operating really can kind of come through so much.
Do you think that because and tell me if I'm onto something here, I'm not sure. It seems to me that because you started in documentary, which is the story is happening and I can't control it on some level. I mean, obviously you could do recreations and things like that, but when it's something real, for lack of a better word, that you in the moment have to decide what the emotion of your movement is, what the emotion of the framing is, because you only have that one chance to grab it. Do you think that makes you a better narrative operator when you have all the time to create it, or like does one translate to the other?
I don't know if it makes me better in any way. I think about that a lot because I always thought, well, I'm a documentary guy and people have told me this. You do docs and we do narratives. And I was like, okay. And now I think the documentary stuff very much informs the narrative things. I think maybe vice versa. But for me, I only know the one way. And I can tell you that I can, when I've been following people in their real house and they're having a moment, even if they're trying to hide it, like I can pick up on it. And if it doesn't feel, and if, depending on what I decide to do in that moment is one thing, but being on a narrative film and trying to understand what these people are going through, my intuition and my sensibilities kind of go up to be like, this doesn't feel right. Like I see them doing this thing. The camera's moving, not in concert with it, but it's almost moving in a way that doesn't feel connected to that invisible thing.
And it's just a feeling you have.
Emotion is a thing that you can see it, right? But it's also like something that, people might be crying because they're happy, they're crying this, but it's like, if you're not careful, like you might pick up on the wrong thing and it might feel, so trying to, find that music of emotion from the scene and move the camera in a way that, I think at least is neutral to it or adds to it.
Adds to it. Well, because there is that, it's funny, as you're saying that, I was thinking about it, especially documentary, because a couple of documentaries I've been involved with, there's that thing where something is happening and you don't want to overpower it, and you don't want to not give it its due, and you don't want to make it about the shot. So there's that constant, at least I had, there's that constant questioning of like, what is the right thing to do at this moment to allow this to play? Like, because sometimes not moving at all is better than moving, and
yeah, you're definitely, and that is a good insight, I think, because I've found myself many times going, something's happening. Do I move closer to it? Do I move closer to how close? Like, oh, I think actually right now they trust me. I can be close, and they trust that wherever I am, I'm in support of whatever microphone I'm trying to provide them for their story.
Do you find that having done that stuff that taught you to commit? Because that was the one thing that I found was no matter what I decided to do, I need to commit to it, or because otherwise it's gonna blow the moment no matter what.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely feel like once I decide that this is the thing to do, like I should try to do it. And I know that like if I'm heading in a direction, like I could probably change, but I can't give up on it. Like let it evolve a little bit.
Yeah.
There's an improvisation to it, I think I can bring that. I think that's the sort of thing, to get back to your other question, is that I think the documentary thing has given me like a very quick response to the improvisation of what occurs in a scene. And I watch, I've spent so much time watching real people on camera through an eyepiece, interact with each other and like around a kitchen table and these things. And so, you just sort of get in tune with the pacing of what it is. And when you have incredible actors doing it, it's like they're almost doing it in the same way.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm almost like, oh, I'll do something that I think is coming. And I'm like, oh, that was weird. Like, and then the director might come out and say, well, I don't know if I like that thing. And I'm like, oh, good. Okay. I didn't like that either.
Great,
like it didn't it felt unnatural to me or something,
Yep.
So yeah, it's interesting. And it's like you kind of look at things and go, I don't know what's not working here, but I can only control my little piece of it. So how can I make this thing work better with my instrument that's part of the scene too. I mean, you know, I think the camera is so much a part of the scene as much as it's not in the scene. You know, it's very much a part of the pacing and the timing and the lensing and the lighting, like all that stuff. I over so many years having lit things that I did not like on docs and then figured out how to light them in a way that helps the story and isn't just a vanity thing to show people I can light and stuff like that.
It's right for what you're shooting.
Yeah. And so like being on set now with all the tools and all the talented people around that are so good at their jobs doing the things most of the time, and then being like, great, like all this stuff is headed towards the right point. And then when that happens, it's great. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. You know, it sort of feels like we land on 3 points and not one.
Has there been a documentary that you've worked on where you went in and you thought that this was the story, but you actually realized, no, that's absolutely not the story. This is the story, like where it's just completely changed?
Yeah, I think almost every time.
Is it right?
Yeah, I don't think there's one. I think I honestly kind of, directors think they know the story. Well, I think they know the story they want to tell, and then the story reveals itself to them. But it's like, you know, the experiencing of a story and an adventure or whatever is so much different than sort of talking about it, especially when people get under pressure, you know, when challenges face them. It's sort of really much, it just becomes on like what they do. I mean, I've definitely been, you know, in people's houses or in their spaces or out in the wild with them or something. And you realize like, this is really about us. It's really about them as much as it is about the thing. It's never about the thing. You know, you're following the people. Yeah. You know, the people are carrying the story and their desire forward. And so you end up following that, you know, all the time. I mean, it's the same with narrative, right?
And well, if it's done well. Yeah. When it's not done well, that's the problem. And have there been documentaries you've worked on where you get emotionally involved with what you're shooting and it becomes hard to actually continue to do, you know, what you need to do?
Always pretty emotionally involved, I think. Not to where it's hard. Definitely where I've been in situations where you would be in a room with people and you're sort of, you know, your empathy is like through the roof because you're like feel for what they're going through. And you're trying to sort of say like, I want to be of service to the person. I need to be of service for the film. And you start making decisions, you know, sometimes it's like, you know, being in the room with somebody going through something, you're impacting their decision just by your presence.
That's sort of what I was wondering in a weird way.
And so once I realized...
Which must weigh on you, right?
Well, I'm sort of like, well, I can't not be here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And so I was doing this film about women who were, you know, in prison, and I followed them out of prison for quite a while. They were drug addicts. They were prostitutes, you know, they had terrible childhoods, they had all this stuff against them, you know, and they come out and they're like, here we are, you know, and they're living in a house and they're trying to get back on their feet. And I remember being in the room with them sometimes because I spent so much time with them just by myself. And I was like, I would leave and I was thinking like, I think just my presence helped them make a better choice.
Oh, interesting.
In a way that is, I mean, like I didn't tell them to make a better choice, but I think they're not.
They know they're being watched, and
I'm there, you know, and they knew me. Like we talked,
yeah,
you know, because you know, it's sort of like, you know, I think the strictly observational documentary to me is very interesting, but it also feels like you're just taking from them, and I don't know that I really like that aspect of it because I think our presence, you know, should at least let them know we care. We're not here to just take, exploit, anything like that. I don't think people do that too much anymore, but it's out there. I've seen it. And so, you know, your presence helps. I think then you build a relationship with them as a subject, but they shouldn't feel like the subject. They should feel like I have a camera. I'm using all the tools, the lighting, everything to help you tell your story so other people can hear it. And I think, that becomes their value sometimes. Like a lot of these women felt like they had no value, like they didn't know how to operate in the real world. They walked around and they felt like everybody knew that they had been through all these terrible things. And I remember just thinking, like, just telling their story has so much value to everybody, whether they're like them or not like them.
Yeah.
And I talked to the one woman about it after that. And I remember later on, she was like, I'd never had thought about it like that. That's very helpful, moving forward. And so you do have an impact on people through the making of the film, for sure. But I think I don't steer, anything, but I'll tell them, like, let's say we're doing a Steadicam shot and I'm like, hey, I want to do this shot, and, here's why. What do you think? Mm-hmm. Do you think that would be cool? Do you think that's something we could do together? It becomes like a little art project.
Yeah.
Because it becomes like,
well, you're collaborators at that point, as opposed to just a subject.
And I asked him, is that a part of your story? This is what I'm picking up on. Is that a part of your story that's important? And do you think this is a good way to articulate it? Maybe. Oh yeah, that's actually pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's like, because I think our job is to sort of like help them tell their story. Sometimes it is to just document it. Depending on what it is. If you're on a kayak thing down a way, you're documenting the thing. But if you're dealing with an addict or, someone who's been a gunshot victim or something, like, it's a different story. And that's what's so fascinating, is trying to figure out, like, now I have the same tool, new story, new people with real stakes, and that to me just feels like a real cool use of my time.
Do you have, if I were to ask you to name 5 of your favorite documentaries that everybody should see?
Oh man.
Putting you on the spot.
One of the things that impacted me first was Woodstock.
Oh, wow.
Because I was into music and I just loved the freedom that they filmed that with. Mm-hmm. And I remember specifically watching that when I was younger in high school and watching the guys on stage with cameras. And I was kind of like, man, they put that whole thing on. It was less about Woodstock and the music for me. It was more about they did an endeavor and they just did it.
Yeah.
So it was very much let's pack up our stuff and head out and see what happens.
Just put your head down and move forward.
Yeah, and I really took away from that. That was good. The earliest thing I really remember, older one, was the Conquest of Everest.
Oh.
And it was about Edmund Hillary in Tenzing, Norway, climbing. And I remember watching that in college relentlessly and just thinking that there was something about the film and there was something about them that was like came together and like it just felt like the film and them were like one thing. It didn't feel, and that's what that and I had already been in the outdoors and stuff, so it just very much felt like that's what it didn't feel like a film about guys. It felt like the film was the event. And that was pretty cool. A thing that hit me later on was Dogtown and Z-Boys, the skateboard documentary. I remember watching that. It was the first thing that I had seen a non-traditional doc that had style and music and timing and pacing that was so unleashed feeling. I think it was, at the time when I was finding film and learning how to run around with the camera in 2001 and sort of getting into this whole world. And I had seen so much like nature documentaries and kind of traditional things. And I saw that and I was like, oh, this is really great.
Yeah.
Like I just loved the style of it. Recently, I watched a documentary that kind of did the same thing for me called 10,000 Days on Earth about Nick Cave.
Oh, wow.
That's one I really find stylistically very cool. I think documentaries, like there's so many good stories out there. Kid Stays in the Picture. There's so many cool stories out there that I love. But
it seems like they're having a little bit of a moment right now, but they're also, some of them are veering into sort of like almost true crime kind of things in a way. Yeah. Is there some that I turn on and I'm like, this is a really interesting story. And then it's just like, no, this is just sort of exploitative for
I mean,
a better word.
Cartel Land, like an outdoor adventure doc, travel, stuff like that's always great, in my case. But I think 10,000 Days on Earth was cool style. Like I'm always looking at these docs to be like, a documentary to me is as much of a narrative as a narrative is. You know, it's still a story. It's a real situation. You have to craft this stuff. You know, you're not always following something. Sometimes you're digging deep, you're reflecting, you're pulling stuff out of the past. You know, you're trying to project into the future a little bit. I mean, you know, there's very much possibly a following nature of a documentary, but you know, sometimes it's, you know, a reflective thing and a historical thing. And the Nick Cave documentary, I'm not a big fan of his music, I guess, but I think after that I was more. But that was a very cool film because it was just so different. And it's sort of like testing the boundaries of what could be done in a doc stylistically. Mm-hmm. Woodstock, Conquest of Everest, they all like have this similar, like they're unique in their style, and I like that about those. So, you know, I watch a lot of narrative things too, shows, but you know, I watch a lot of different things. I listen to a lot of different music, and I'm always sort of trying to draw on that stuff, you know, here and there. And it doesn't always happen because a lot of times I'm also just trying to like make the most of the thing we're in and not hold an idea so hard that I can't see the opportunity that's in front of us, you know, because sometimes that happens too. It's like, I know what this shot should be, and then I show up and I'm like, you know, if you're too closed off and you're grappling with that idea, then there is no room to sort of, I never want to lose an opportunity that's in front of me to build something or collaborate on a new idea because I have the idea so locked in. And I've been on a lot of things where, you know, the DPs or the directors or somebody's got this idea, and there's definitely a better thing in front of us now that we're here and we're all here and the light's different and this is different and all the things are happening and we see the costume or whatever. I'm like, let that idea inspire us, but let's not hold on to it so tightly that we can't seize an opportunity that could be more interesting right now. That's
much better. Something that's come up in the moment, which I mean, we've all been there. Sometimes it's allowed to happen, and sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
So you drove up here from Baltimore because you've been gracious enough to include me in a project that you're starting. Tell us about that. Or not starting, you're in the middle of, I guess, or you're somewhere in the journey of.
Man, if this is starting, I gotta.
I shouldn't say starting.
Yeah. No, thank you. So I approached Garrett Brown, the inventor of all the cool things that we use, the Steadicam, the Skycam, and Divecam, MobiCam, and the Flycam. And I approached him and like, man, it had to be like 2014 or 2015.
Oh, it was that long ago? I didn't realize.
And I was at his house, and I had worked on this idea about a documentary that demonstrated the effect of the Steadicam and the effect of all his work.
You're saying you had worked on something?
I had curated the idea in my head, and I had written it down.
Yeah.
And I brought it to Jay Kilroy, and I was like, I have this idea, and he was like, you can ask him, but he's not going to do it. Everybody asked him to do a doc about him, and he's just
that was
no.
My question is, I'm sure a number of people have asked this in the past.
Oh yeah, he said like everybody's asked me, you know, no, and everyone's like, it's not going to happen. And I'm
does he say why he would say no?
I don't know. I don't think he told me. I don't think he ever told me.
My guess is, knowing Garrett, is he would be concerned about someone getting it wrong.
Well, 100%. Yeah. That's definitely the case. Yeah. I mean, he's probably concerned about that with me, but I brought him the idea and I told him this is what it is. And I think I must have said the right things because he was like, I'd never say yes to this, but yes, like write up a treatment, work on it. And I remember thinking like, great. We got the green light from Garrett to make a doc about Garrett. Like, how did I get here?
I'm screwed.
And I thought, well, shit, now I really got to figure this thing out. And so I kind of went home for a couple of years and was like, what is this film?
What is it?
Like, I knew what I wanted the film to do because I know for me what Garrett inspired, what I was inspired by him. I see a lot of myself in him or him and me or something, whatever that is. And so I knew what was important to me, but I just didn't know what the film was going to be. So I knew what I wanted it to achieve, I guess. And so I really had to figure out like, well, I don't know how that's going to happen. So I just thought about it and did some writing and like, you know, I didn't need to do the research and whatever. And so, it wasn't until maybe 2018 or 2017 I started really writing a treatment out and a deck and sort of trying to figure this thing out and like, made a sizzle reel, and tried to like dial in what the story is. And that was like 2020. Mm-hmm. And we took the sizzle reel, and I had the deck, and we went back to his house and we showed him the sizzle reel, and he like broke down. He got
it's if it's the one I saw, it's amazing. It's like,
yeah, it was early version, and he, and he was like, this is it, this is amazing, whatever. And we were like, man, that's good. Okay, cool. We're on the right track. Like, we didn't, we still got the green light, and then even then I remember thinking, this is not the film, like this is like a piece of the film, but it's not the film. And I would say that was 2020. And then we went through some iterations and worked on it, and we were trying to raise money, and everybody was like, oh, you're going to raise the money right away. And
yeah, it seems like a no-brainer, but of course nothing's a no-brainer, right?
It's COVID, and I think, a lot of the directives of the streamers and stuff change all the time of what they're into. They're projecting out, they're scheduling for 3 years out, like whatever they're doing. And, at the time, we were just trying to shop this thing around, and everybody thought it was going to get picked up. And I was a little bit, I was excited, but I was, it sort of gets swept up in everybody else's opinion. But I was very like, man, I still don't know if I know what the thing is. And,
is it the kind of thing, because I think I would be this way, is it the kind of thing that you're a little afraid of because it is something that is so dear to you that you don't want to stumble and get it wrong?
No, I'm not afraid of it. I just, I didn't know what it was. Mm-hmm. That was all. I wasn't afraid of it at all. I was more of like, I know it's there. I just can't, like, I'm mining for it, like, it's like, I know the thing is in the sand somewhere, and I just can't find it. I just can't find it. And it's probably not even that deep. Mm-hmm. And so I really, it's odd, man, because I thought about this. I mean, I'm saying, like, I thought about this thing every day.
I'll bet.
For multiple hours a day, every day, for like the past 6 years.
Wow.
Like, I don't think there was a day. I mean, I can think of very few days where I didn't think about it because I might have been doing something else. But I mean, like, it is just constantly there. I know that, whatever comes out will be good. And so anyway, fast forward, like, we finally found an investor for the movie. And so we have a little bit of money to make the film now.
Before you got the investor, had you started interviewing him at all, or you were waiting? Oh, okay.
So I got a camera. I started interviewing him almost just for like more information to like get him comfortable with me. Like, I went to his house and I set up lights and I, did my DP thing, and he was like, "Oh, you need a fill light. I don't like the way this looks. I look old." I'm like, "Well, you are old, and I was like, "What do you want to DP the movie, Garrett?" And so, it was very fun, and we were, we went on his boat and, collected a lot of good things, and it was all kind of me sort of, feeling around in the dark a little bit, I think. And it wasn't until literally like this year where I finally, like, even like the past, maybe I would say 2 months, where I really understood like that of what the film is now. And now I'm like, okay, now I can go make the thing.
Oh, but interesting.
But I mean, and I wonder that, what's interesting to me is that I've been wanting to make this for so long, but I didn't know what it was. And then we got the money and I know what it is now. And it's sort of like, oh, like, thank God we didn't get it, because it's been so hard to figure out what this thing is.
Thank God you didn't get what?
The money to do it in 2020, because I don't know that I would have made the right thing.
You would have gone down the wrong road, basically.
Maybe I would have figured it out, but I don't know that I would have, because I think my priorities were a little different. I was less mature. Yeah. There was definitely, the sort of like, I want to make us, we're making us film about a guy who made tools so we can tell stories. It better be a good story. And I didn't want it to be an A to B to C film. And now I sort of understand how I think I can get around that and make something great. And so part of that is we have to document what happened and the effect of the tools and on people's careers and the community and the sort of opportunities that I think, these inventions provided filmmakers with some freedom and some instruments to go make their films better, and I don't know where we'd be without some of the stuff he made and some of the precedents he set. And I think it's in everybody's face all the time. I just think it'll be fun for people that are not in the film industry to meet this guy. And hopefully it's like inspiring to them to say like, man, I should just go try to figure it out.
Well, I think that's what I like you say, people who haven't met him. I mean, he's I obviously have a place in my heart for him for a number of reasons, but he's also just the most interesting, charismatic, funny, bizarre, like he's larger than life on so many levels, right? And he's a great storyteller. And it is the kind of thing where when you learn his story, you realize like this was just like I refuse to give up, and everything is telling me that I should, so many times, right? And so many wrong turns and this and that and the other, but just not giving up, which I think there's that alone, there's a tremendous amount of value in, right? Yeah. And when you think about it, I don't know if you agree, but I've always felt this way. I don't think there's one singular person who's had as big of an effect on the way we tell stories in film as he has. I can't think of anything.
I mean, definitely directors, right?
Well, but there are directors, but I'm saying he created something that literally changed the way that we make movies. And it was one person. I mean, there are groups, and you could say people created the Panavision cameras, unbelievable, but that's a group of people, Yeah,
he definitely created the thing. And what's funny is I was telling somebody the other day who's not in the industry about the film, and I was like, I think he kind of invented the guitar. Like I said, that's like the closest thing I can get to, because it's an instrument that can sort of like, people can learn to artistically play, technically play. Yep. It emits some sort of sound in a way that is a story and an emotion, and it does this, and it can be dynamic, it can be quiet, it can be loud, it can be all these things. I was like, that's the kind of thing that it is to me. And it's interesting to me because I grew up playing guitar, and I love the Steadicam for all the same reasons. And I feel like it just kind of replaced it for me. Yeah. And so that's the closest sort of thing I can get to as like a metaphor.
No, I like that as a metaphor. That's really great. And then, as you said that, I thought, and like, it's like Eric Clapton would be nothing without the guitar, and the guitar would probably be nothing without Eric Clapton, or, whoever you want to put in there. Right.
Right.
So I think there's a little bit of that too, right?
Totally.
Because then it's like, and that's you and I have talked about this. The part of the beauty is, look, he created this thing, but then he gave it. He said, no, let's like get a big tent and bring everybody in who wants to do this, because we'll all make it better. And that's sort of the larger beauty of it, I think, sometimes is that he achieved that, because then you got people, like Ted Churchill and Larry McConkie and on and on and on, who just kept on raising the bar.
Yeah, the tons of guitar players that go out and like make better music than we ever make.
Exactly.
And it's fun to see, and that's why I like teaching, because it's like, I taught guitar growing up a bit, and it's like seeing people catch the bug of like, oh, I know what this is now. That sort of little bit of wake up where you put it on and you're like, oh, this is weird, I don't know how to do this. And then you get like 3 seconds where it's like, oh, everything was working. Yep. And like, oh, I felt like everything was moving at the same speed, and like the frame was like, and you're like
when you see a student hit that moment.
Yeah. And
I've seen it. It's
and it just clicks, and it's like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and you're trying to get 10, and then you're trying to get a minute. And it sort of becomes this like tightrope walk that you're always doing. And once you get that little, like, it's like a drug where you're like, can I do this for a while? And then it's like, okay, now I know how to use this thing. Ask me to do something, and then you're like, oh, that's good. That's somebody else's idea. Let me see if I can bring their thing. And then you start to become, it sort of becomes your instrument, where you're like, tell me what you want me to play. And like, I can do it technically right, I can do it artistically right, I can create emotion with this thing, I can go slow, fast, all the things, all the nuanced stuff. becomes part of your little bag of tricks. And it's so much fun watching students that, get that little thing in the week that they click and they figure it out. And also, like, when I'm teaching it, I learn so much more about what I'm actually doing. And then it's just great because I get to hang out with my friends and people that I learn from, and listen to you and listen to Dave Emmerichs and see, like, Harhoff and other people come in and do, a little bit of time with each person. And Garrett comes in and
at the workshops.
Yeah, at the workshops. It's just, it's so exciting every time. And I find that there's very few things I can repetitively do that are exciting every time.
I totally understand what you're saying. Well, it's funny. There's so many things I think about as you're saying that. Number one is, and I've said this before, it's like I don't play golf, but I have gone to, like, the driving range and I'm terrible. But I do understand that thing, and Steadicam is very much like that. You connect with the ball and it goes, well, for me, really far. And you go, oh, I totally get this. Yeah. And then you can't do it for like 30 balls. And you're like, this is horrible. And then you connect again and you're like, oh, wait.
That felt nice. Yeah.
But I've seen that look on students' faces where they get like those 3 steps where they're like, oh, and then it's gone. And you're like, okay, but you'll get back there. Like, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But, and the other thing that I always loved about, I took the class in 93, 92 or whatever. And I took an EFP class when they had them. And then I took the Malibu Classic workshop. And it was just like all of these operators who I didn't know, because this is pre-internet. So I was like, I don't know who any of these people are. But like, oh, wait, you said you worked on this. I saw that. Like, I was like, oh, these are big people. They were showing up and they were like, no, you don't hold it like that. You hold it like this. Like, you want to do this. And it was like, you're giving away all your secrets. And then I realized, like, oh, there aren't any secrets. Like, this is just everybody sharing their way of doing it because they're hoping that they'll learn something or they'll teach me and I'll do it better. There was just this like big tent mentality. Yeah. And it's the same thing, like you were saying, like these operators show up and huge operators will walk in for a day and go, hey, come on out, let's go over here. I'll show you how to do this or whatever, to some student who's never, never been on a film set before.
Yeah. I think there's this sort of thing that, I'm very competitive in a way, but with this stuff, it's like you're not, because I like to compete when I play tennis or whatever, but like when I'm doing this, it sort of feels like I could, we could teach one student every single thing we know and get them good, but they'll never do it like us.
No. Well,
and I love that. I'm like, do it like you. Like, that's what you want them to do, is like find your own version of this thing.
Find your language. And
that's such a cool thing. And I think in the entire industry, I feel like that's sort of a thing that can get applied everywhere, which is like people can teach each other how to do so many different things and like let them, everybody's going to do it different, and like, if you bring yourself to the thing, then it's yours, it's like, you can't, no one can do it like you, no matter what you teach them. And I do have friends that are in the industry that feel like, oh, you're teaching these workshops, they're going to take our jobs. I'm like, no, what, really? Like, I don't think so. Like, and you know what? Then good for them. And by the way, they're that ambitious,
then
cool.
Then they should. And that's, then it's my time. But, I was just thinking as you were saying that it's like, I think part of that becomes, there are wrong ways to do a shot, but there's no right way to do a shot. Like, you're going to do it a little differently. Like, your push-in is going to be slightly different than mine. And they're going to say different things, and they're going to have a different language. And it is that thing of you finding your own language there. But
that's a really good way to put it, that there is no right way, but there is definitely a wrong way.
Yeah, there's definitely a wrong way, which is like, well, you didn't even have them in frame. That's clearly wrong.
Not right.
But there's nuances and everything. And even when we're doing a shot, like, you'll do 16 takes or something. Hopefully not. Maybe you do 5 takes or whatever. But they're never going to be exactly the same, right? Even if you're trying to, they're not going to be the same, because your cadence is going to be different. Yeah. I don't know if you have this or not, but I mean, I've been doing this for 35 years. I can't tell you how many hours I've flown a Steadicam. I have no way to calculate that, but it's thousands. And I will walk into a workshop, because it's usually one of the only times I see this. And I'll walk into a workshop and I'll see, like David Emmerichs or Chris Harhoff or you or anyone there flying a Steadicam and look at it and go, that is really cool.
Yeah.
Like, when I see it, I'm like, wow, how does it do? Like, I mean, I know how it does it, but it's still like, that shouldn't be like that. Do you get that?
Yeah, that's what I was saying
it's
about
amazing.
That first time I saw it, is that when I see somebody do it, I'm still like, man, the thing is so beautiful.
There's something
flying
about
out,
it,
but
right?
like, what are they doing? You know, it's like, or I'm like, oh my God, look at how they move. Like, I don't, you know, I like, there's certain people that move like the Steadicam, and then the Steadicam, you know, it's like, and then there's people that it's almost like there's people that are just like walking around and then the thing's doing the thing. And I'm like, oh man, it's so interesting. It's so, everybody's different and everybody's bodies are different. Their posture's different and nobody starts in the same place. And some people are stronger than others or taller. And it's just so cool to see somebody. And that's why I go back to the guitar is like, it's, you know, it doesn't discriminate really, you know, against, you know, and like, it's fun to watch people show up who perceivably are inexperienced, maybe, or don't have a good sense of composition and all the things that are required to make a nice shot. And by the end of the week, they have like these skills emerging that they didn't even know they had that may send them in another direction altogether, you know, and it's like so fun.
It is kind of amazing, especially when you get those people on like day one who at the end of the day one, they're just like, I can't do this. And it's just like, no, just stick with it. Well, I'm sticking with it, but I'm worried I can't do it. And then day 4, you're like, remember day 1? When you said you could like look at what you're doing now. You just successfully like, you know, did a roundy and came 180 into a close up or whatever. It's so cool to see that. And it kind of, it's one of those things that whenever I'm at one of the workshops and I teach, it reminds me of how much fun this all is, which is, it's just at the end of the day, I think why we all stick with it.
I think that's it. I think the other thing, aside from the tool, is that, you know, a lot of my friends came because of Steadicam, but they're not my friends because of Steadicam. You know, like I'm not friends with you because we both do Steadicam. That just brought us together. And like, I think about how many of my friends do that, and I think about other careers and other people. It's like, I don't know that bankers hang out with other bankers all the time. I mean, I'm sure they do like by default, but probably not, you know. And I'm like, man, I talk to my Steadicam mates all the time, you know, not about Steadicam. It's a type of person. It's just like my friends that were working docks and travel, and you know, like it's just similar personalities that are drawn to these things. And there are different people, but
misfit toys.
And it's just, but it's fun because it really is such a unique, really smart, sharp group of people that do this for some reason. I think, you know, it takes a lot of persistence. It takes discipline. And it takes, you know, artistic, you know, intuition, and like you have to be aware and you have to be able to communicate and all these. I mean, you don't have to, but definitely the better operators, I think, are really keyed up on all those things. And I think they're interesting to be around.
Well, and I think there's something to you sort of hit on something there, which is this is not something that you get good at. It's not easy to get good at this. And I think that there's a certain type of person who doesn't give up on it, you know, and Garrett, by the way, leading that charge of going, I can't figure this out, but I'm going to figure this out. I think there's a lot to that. And that may be why a lot of us sort of, you know, stick together and whatever. I was just thinking, as you were saying that, there's probably not a week goes by that I don't send Buzz Moyer some really terrible pun in a text, and then he sends it back to me, and then, you know, we usually get Lisa Sinney in there, and the three of us are going round and round, and it's just stupid, but it sort of, you know, it connects us.
It is. It's fun, and I mean, it's a language too, you know, like the language of shots and Steadicam, whether you're, you know, even not a Steadicam operator. I mean, it's like, you know, and even, you know, like working with really good dolly groups, like they kind of have the same mentality for composing a shot and stuff like that. It's just, it's really cool. And, you know, for me, it's something I didn't expect. So I feel very grateful to do it and to be a part of it. And, you know, to sort of wonder, like, you know, what am I not doing? Like, what else is out there? And, you know, all that stuff. You kind of are like, you know, it's easy to just keep going in the same direction and take one thing after the next, but it's sort of like, well, what else is there like that I don't know about? Because someone opened this door for me, thank God. Like, is there another door that somebody could open or I could open that goes somewhere else? Like, it's just what's kind of fun about this career for me.
No
is
question.
Like, it was a bit of an accident, I think.
So you didn't say the name of the documentary, which is?
Oh, Thank You, Mr. Brown. Which, we're basically where we are right now is I've shot some interviews, and you're the first interview after Garrett.
I'm sort of
so thank you for doing
by.
that.
I wish you hadn't told me that.
Yeah, no pressure.
Although I'm happy to be your guinea pig, because then it means the other ones will be that much better because you'll figure out what I'm doing wrong.
No, it's definitely not going to be you. I think you're equipped for the interview more than I am. And so, so we'll, my goal is to have this done in a year. Awesome. And, make something that captures Garrett's story, but it uses his story to like inspire other people,
that's
to go do whatever. Yeah. And I think hopefully, I think what I learned is like, there is the matters of Garrett's story that go through the film, but then there's like the story of the inventions that other people use and do things with. And then there's sort of like this little layer on top of like my, purpose for trying to get other people to go do the thing that Garrett did on top of that. So it's been a really interesting thing. It's been super challenging for me because it's not a follow documentary. And it's not an adventure thing. It's not an outdoor thing. And it's 50 years of history and movies that I can't comprehend. And, it's an industry I can't see all the way into and whatever. So it's just been really a bit complex to sort of try to, outline this thing in some sort of structure that feels like a movie that everybody could watch. Yeah. So we'll see.
I'm looking forward to it. Well, good
Me
luck
too.
with it. I
Thanks.
will put some information on the website, on the webpage.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing this. This was a blast to sit down and talk with you.
Been fun.
You and I are going to talk more for the other thing tomorrow, but this was great. I'm gonna leave you with the question that I leave everybody with, and you can take us out with it. Advice for someone getting into the business today on how to succeed, and or something you've learned along the way that you wish you knew early on.
I think the thing that has come to me recently in the past 5 years is there's no straight line to success. Everybody has like their own path, and a lot of people will say, oh, you should do this. You should make a short before you write a long thing. You should do this. And maybe they've done the thing that you want to do, or maybe they haven't done the thing you want to do, but they're still giving advice. And I think the thing that I realized was that I'm looking for a map all the time to go forward. And I think you just make the map as you go. There's not really a map out there. There's not a handbook. There's no strategy, in terms of like, oh, you should do this and this will lead to that. Like, things just happen as you start to take action. And I think the faster and sooner you sort of put a dot on the map and then try to get there, and then once you get there, try to put another one, then your journey starts to move a little bit. If you wait for someone to come ask you out and put a dot on a map for you, and then you go say yes, like that's fine too. That'll happen. But I think the best thing is to sort of say like, I want to do this, so I'm just going to try to do it. And then you start moving yourself a little bit. I think that's the secret, is like consistently trying to do that thing, and not look for the answers before you go. Like, the answers will come. I wish I would have known that, because I think I sort of prevented myself from sort of, doing some writing and some other things I wanted to eventually do. And I was like, well, I need to figure out how to do this. And that's not what I do. And, now I'm starting to take a lot more action than I used to, because I realized that that's what's going to bring the results. And I think, maybe other people know that. It was new, a little bit news to me. And I think it's just sort of like, you have to kind of go out there into the unknown a little bit and see what happens. And I think it's taking the workshop. It's, if you're trying to be a Steadicam operator, it's just writing the script that you have an idea for. And if it's terrible, it's still a script, and then you learn how to make another one, or be a photographer, and I think, those build skills, but it also gives you experience, but also just moves you forward. And so I think my advice would be to don't think too much, just kind of start doing stuff and little things add up very quickly, you know, and maybe don't look for like the map that has the answers to get you to the next thing. Like, just kind of go.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll be back soon with another great episode. Don't forget to check us out on theop.io for all sorts of information on operating and storytelling. So thanks for listening and have a great day.